Weddings should be memorable, but not for the groom's lack of style. That's why our friends at the Black Tux design rental suits and tuxedos that you'll love wearing at your wedding. So if you end up getting featured on a list of 23 epic wedding fails, at least you know you'll look good for your close-up. For my own wedding, I had to get fitted at a place that was 30 miles away from where I live. After waiting a long time for the tux to come in, it still didn't fit just right, and I had to keep making inconvenient back and forth drives to their location until they got it right. But the best part about the Black Tux is that they have an easy online ordering process that brings your suit or tuxedo straight to you. Just pick a style at theblacktux.com and request a free home try-on so you can feel the fit and quality before you commit. And if online isn't your style, they have showrooms all over the country where you can find your fit and plan your look. With over 5,000 five-star reviews across Wedding Wire, The Knot and their own website agree. You won't find another rental experience or designs like the ones you'll find at the Black Tux. Grooms, if you want your wedding to be remembered for the right reasons, visit theblacktux.com/listen. That's theblacktux.com/LISTEN for $20 off your purchase. Walk, don't run to theblacktux.com/listen to find a look for you and your crew. theblacktux.com. Formal wear for the moment.
Hey, this is Dirk Nowitzki, and you listen to the Mavs Step Back podcast.
I like this, TK. I like that. Yeah, it's the Mavericks, all about action. Don't do no acting, no Samuel Jackson. Dirk get the ball, you know that it's magic. Post move deadly, yeah, get tragic. Look with the ball, yeah, get nasty. He'll drop 30, don't gotta ask him. Got Chris Stapps, coach at the Adam. I spaz like Dallas, I thought I'm rapping. God, if Luka shoot the ball, you know that it's cash. But my boy still looking to pass. Now he got my boy Chris Stapps, looking like Duncan Nash in the gap. They just want a ring, wanna fill the gap on your team head. I ain't talking hats, dang, go relax. Still at the champs, defense still coming with the cannabis flow. The man's the best on the flow.
Welcome back to the Step Back, everybody. I'm Dalton Trigg. I'm joined as always by my co-host and DallasBasketball.com colleague Matt Galatzan, and we've got Kirk Henderson with us here tonight. He's an editor at Mavs Moneyball. You probably know him as Kirk Serious Face on Twitter. Some people might even know him as the destroyer of my hopes and dreams when it comes to Mavs playoffs and, you know, other things of that nature. But anyway, he's here with us. Kirk, how you doing?
I'm real well. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Matt, how you doing tonight?
Good, man. Ready to get this rolling and talk about some Mavs and some more crushing of your dreams.
Yeah, yeah. That seems to be a theme at this time of the year, especially when, you know, the Mavs are falling like they have been. But they actually got off of their 5-game losing streak last night. They beat the Indiana Pacers, third team in the East. 110-101. Luka had a really good game. Brunson had a really good game. Dirk, he hit some really big shots in the fourth quarter. And, you know, earlier that morning, I had posted on DallasBasketball.com an article explaining the lottery odds and rationalizing a Mavs organic tank and all that. And who would have thought that's all it would have took to get the Mavs to, you know, go back into the win column.
And that, like, they actually played real basketball. It was a game where everyone seemed to play with a little bit of passion. You know, Luka had 5 first half turnovers, which I like, my inner Rick Carlisle was screaming. But then the second half, they really, you know, seemed to get it all together and pull away from a team that is really playing well in the Pacers.
The thing about the Pacers is that they're missing Oladipo as well, so they're filling in Wes Matthews for Oladipo, and he's, you know, hitting 44% from three or whatever, and they're still winning games, and they're still staying at third in the East. And the Mavs just came out and beat a really good team, and, you know, having lost a few games against real, you know, terrible basketball teams here in the last. Not all, you know what I mean. I mean, it's nice to see them get a good win when they're on such a, you know, tough losing streak, but also to crush Dalton's article on the day that it was written was also something kind of special.
Well, and I mean, I won't get too carried away with it. I mean, I know it's just one win, but man, it was an impressive win, even if they didn't have Oladipo, and that was one of my favorite moments. You mentioned Wes Matthews taking Oladipo's place with Indiana. That was one of my favorite parts of the game. Even past Dirk hitting some big buckets, and Brunson having a good game, and Luka doing his thing, but specifically Luka taking it to Wes Matthews after some of those pregame comments he was making. It was awesome.
I think my favorite part was really, I bagged on Wes harder than any play. Well, I bag on every player. What are we talking about? The Office gif of his turnovers was really just a go-to move for me during games this year, and then just be able to use it, but it was on the other team was really rewarding. The fact that the Pacers let him guard Luka, just like he has this defensive reputation that isn't matched by reality. Like the guy just can't move laterally anymore. So to see him get cooked by Luka, was a lot of it was just like low key very rewarding. Like part of my lizard brain thinks that he chose the Pacers because the Mavericks were still on the schedule. But it's interesting. Like the Pacers are just kind of one of those teams, like kind of an aspirational team for the Mavs to look to, because they just have a bunch of guys that play really well together. And then to see Dallas come out and do that themselves was really what I got a kick out of, because we've been kind of talking back and forth for the better part of a month now that we thought that the team got better by subtraction with losing 80% of the old starting lineup. That hasn't been the case in wins losses, but they feel better. And like last night was the first game really since the trade where everything came together nicely. I mean, what are the Pacers in the East? Like, are they fourth or fifth?
Third.
Geez, so we beat a playoff team, and we beat the crap out of a playoff team. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I kept thinking, Wes had 20 points, so I mean, it's not like he didn't have a bad game by any means for the Pacers, but there was a lot of games where he put up those kind of numbers for Dallas this season, but he still had some plays here and there, some bad turnovers, some Stanley from The Office dribbling, episodes that we've made fun of on Twitter sometimes. So I mean, he had some of those moments, especially in the fourth quarter, that I think really put it over the top for the Mavs. But overall, it was fun. It was good to see how his hair has grown. Lord, that was something. It was eating his headband, his Ninja Turtle headband. So he doesn't even look like the same West that was in Dallas. But overall, fun win, and it delayed the organic tanking at least for a little bit there. But
well, can I talk about? I want to talk about your article real quick, because one, I really liked it, because I ever since getting Porzingis, I basically have stopped hoping, because it feels greedy at this point. But last year when we were kind of doing this with Luka and anything related to it, it was so ridiculous, because the Mavs came out of the All-Star break and won 4 of 10 games. And I remember having a panic attack, and I wrote this ridiculous article about the fact that they needed to commit to tanking, which felt insane right at the time, being the Mavericks. And then they lost 12 of 14 to finish the year, in one of the most magnificent tanking performances of NBA history. Because shouldn't they? I feel like last year they were supposed to have won 9 or 10 more games than they actually did based on their point differential. So that's almost spoiled us for what to expect if the Mavericks try to do anything like that, because I don't know if they can. The team's just too much, it's too talented this year in comparison.
I think another thing that you have to think about kind of is that, it's going to be really hard, even if you're tanking and you're doing your best. Their schedule is not that difficult down the stretch. I mean, they still play Memphis 3 times, among other, just some easy part of their schedule. So it's you can't, even when you're tanking, you can't expect to lose. They're not going to lose 25 games in a row. So, and it's also gonna help the team kind of grow and feel better together when they beat teams like Indiana like this. And so I think in the long run, it's kind of a good thing, because it keeps people excited seeing what they can do, but as well as the team. But it also it's just going to happen sometimes. You know, if they can't commit to tanking like they did last year, like you said, as well, because they're, like you said, also they're just too good. You know, it's Luka makes it so hard to lose games sometimes. He's too good to do that.
Well, and think about it, and if you look at what I looked back at some of the past draft lotteries, and the Mavs, even with that, tank effort that they had last season, they ended up with the third best odds to win the lottery. They moved back to fifth. They had the fifth pick. But then you look at Sacramento, 2017. They had the eighth.
Was it ninth?
No, it was eighth.
Yeah.
And they moved up to third, and that eventually, I don't know who had that pick, but anyway, it eventually ended up with Boston getting Jason Tatum. And then the next year, they had the seventh best odds, and they moved up to 3 again, and they got Bagley. So, I mean, I think people want to tank to the extreme, but I don't think it's really necessary, because it's really a crapshoot. I mean, just send Luka to the lottery. Like, that Kirk, you're currently campaigning for that with your screen name on Twitter right now, but I really believe that. Like, send Luka to the lottery, and something good's bound to happen.
What was the there was something in your article, like a term where you were like, it's the description for, like, if you believe that your luck is actually going to change at some point. What was that called?
Oh, shoot, I'll have to look it up.
Basically, the argument is at some point or another you have to actually move up, or you have to win if you keep playing long enough. And
yeah,
never moved up.
Talking about, are you talking about like playing the slots at a casino?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you have to put so many coins in the machine before you actually win. I mean, it's bound to happen at some point. And the Mavs, we talked about this the other day. They haven't ever moved up in the lottery in the team's history. So, I mean, it's bound to happen sometime. It might as well be this year. I mean, maybe it won't be, but hopefully it will be.
Yeah, and that's kind of where my head is in terms of all that stuff, because if even like Brian Windhorst today was talking about it on the Collective podcast, where he says, if the Mavericks move up to the 7th worst record, move up, that's the wrong way to phrase it, but you know what I mean, then they have something like, is it a 33% chance to jump into the top 4? Like, that's wild.
Yeah, they're 3 games separated from Memphis right now. Or I guess it might be 4 after Memphis lost and Mavs won, but I think they're at like 26% right now, and if they catch up to Memphis, it jumps up to 32%, and if they catch up to Washington, it jumps even more. Yes,
37. If they can get to that 6th spot, it'd be 37.2% to land in the top 4, and then they'd have a 9% chance at the overall pick. So that'd be huge.
And they have like a 0.6% chance of making the playoffs. So it's kind of like, okay, we got to at least start to play our odds at some point here.
Right.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next thing. A lot of fans, they get on board with the organic tanking stuff, and I mean, even I've done that here lately because, like we mentioned before, my playoff hopes, they're just shattered. But even then, I don't agree with like Philadelphia 76ers tanking, a few years back, because I think that's what really hurts the culture of your team. But I mean, doing what the Mavs are doing, they basically just traded all their starters. Even if it is addition by subtraction, you're not going to just start winning right off the bat with a bunch of new players. You have to build chemistry, and so I mean, that's why we call it organic tanking, because they have the talent there, but to win a few more games. We talked about it earlier, Kirk, a few weeks ago, about how you expected them to play 500 basketball after the trade. Are you still following that?
I mean, I can see it. I don't, some of Coach Carlisle's rotations have gotten a little wonky, where Luka's sitting a little bit longer than I think he normally would. His minutes have kind of gone down since the All-Star break. Not too much, but I want to say it's like 2 or 3 minutes after he was playing as much as 35 minutes a game. And little things like that end up affecting the outcome. So I've kind of walked back from that. But you just, what I'm seeing is these pieces like Dorian Finney-Smith, Tim Hardaway Jr., Dwight Powell, really making a case for some part of the rotation next year. And that's what we have now that we really didn't have last year in terms of what to watch for. Some of these guys were still on the team, but the team was just not really moving forward in a strong enough direction. So it's almost like I really am reveling in the wins like last night, even though it's not great for like their lottery odds, because it was, you could like see things that are going to translate directly into next season.
Right. Matt, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I like what Kirk said, and I agree about the developing the players in terms of, Dorian and Maxey and Dwight and now Jalen Brunson. I mean, last year we were watching like Kyle Collinsworth and Jameel Warney and all these players who, like, in the back of our heads we kind of knew weren't going to be there. We're just like, yeah, I mean, this is nice, but what are we really doing here? And now it's just like you kind of have to have that balance. And I don't know if 500 basketball was ever really on the table after the All-Star break, or after the trade rather. But you can see how, if you really just watch the games, you can see how they've gotten better in multiple areas. But the areas that are really affecting the games the most, in my opinion, are where, and we all bagged on them earlier, but like where DeAndre Jordan is now missing, specifically in rebounding. They're just getting crushed rebounding, and that's been a big thing for them losing games lately. And I know a lot of DeAndre's rebounds were with nobody around or whatever, but you still got to be able to grab those. And for the most part, I think that the chemistry that these guys are building, especially with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Luka, is going to kind of, you're not going to really see it pay dividends until October or November next year. But it's what the work they're putting in now is going to make a difference.
Yeah, and like Kirk said about you can see players starting to really take on these defined roles. And I think, everybody has labeled the Clippers as a big free agency player this summer because, they have all these really nice role players, and, it just seems like a good team if a star wanted to join it and have a really good supporting cast and everything. Well, I mean, if you look at the Mavs, they have the potential for a little bit of that too. The only difference is they have, Luka. So,
they're absolutely the better situation. Like, it's not even a question for me because, we've done this as Dallas fans. We did this in 2012, 2013, 2014, where it's like, look, we've got a good framework. If only someone would join us. And, granted, LA is a little bit of a different situation, but you have at least 2 or 3 reasonable rotation pieces that you could have in a top 8. Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. That's good.
Yeah, that's really good. I think if they stay healthy, and I mean, I know there's a chance that Porzingis might have a minutes restriction starting out. But I mean, if they stay healthy, and even if they don't hit a home run in free agency, even if they just add a couple of second tier guys or just some useful players to add to their depth and everything, I think they're going to be a playoff team next year. And I mean, I really truly think that's more of a certainty than way more than what it's been these last 2 years. Because as good as Luka's been, he's going to get better. And I mean, if Porzingis is healthy, they're being cautious keeping him out now, and they're hoping to strengthen his core and his lower body so he doesn't have any more. Hopefully, doesn't have any more issues going forward. But I mean, I don't think he's going to have as much rust as people think he will coming out of the gates.
Well, expectations are going to be lower. This will be the first time since he's been in the NBA where he's not necessarily required to be the guy. And that, like that, being able to ease a guy like that back into a role, as everybody starts to figure themselves out next year is really a luxury. I told you when we've talked before that, like, my kind of ceiling, if he plays 65 games next year, I'm going to be thrilled because, one, that's more than he's played in a while, but two, it means that what Dallas has tried to do has brought him along. And I think that, like, when you look at the overall framework and what they're building up right now, like, playoffs is, I give you grief about this and before, but, like, I'm with you. Like, playoffs is the new goal. It might be quite a game jump, like, who knows if they finish with, like, 33 wins and they add, they need to add 11 more next year, and that just doesn't happen that often. Maybe this is going to be one of those times where it actually happens.
Well, I kind of want to go back to the whole LA, the Clippers being a destination. I mean, are they really that much of a destination, or is it just because they're in LA? I don't see how. I just don't see how how you can look at the Mavericks in Texas, where there's no state income tax, by the way. Free agents just here. But where you have Luka and you have Kristaps, two young stars, and then you have, like Kirk said, the role players like Maxey and Dorian and guys will fit in immediately and help your team. But, like, the Clippers have, like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and, like, Los Angeles. Like, I don't see what's so appealing about that. I don't see why everybody always has to put LA in the top tier free agent, destination spots. It doesn't make sense. Even the Lakers.
Matt, how dare you skip over versus Mavs All-Star Harrell? Can't even think of his first name. Montrezl Harrell.
Oh, man. That guy's the dude, all right? He was unbelievable.
He averages 16 points per game on the season. I think he shoots like 63% or whatever. And I don't even remember he had, like 34 points, and it was like 14 of 17 from the field. Like,
oh yeah.
And he was laughing the whole game.
Here's a trivia thing for you, and the only reason I know this is because I covered him in Summer League years and years ago, and it's just stuck in my head. So he's 6'7". How big do you think his wingspan is?
7'4".
7'4".
Good Lord, have mercy.
That is why he was just, like, mauling. Because it's like, okay, he's able to dunk, yes, but he has go-go gadget arms to reach out. Anyways, I agree with what you're saying about Los Angeles. It is a little bit wonky. I mean, I think Kawhi Leonard wants to go there, but otherwise, at this point, it's got to be about situation. And, it's one thing if a super-duper star doesn't want to come play with Dallas, but if you're a second or third tier or kind of like a role player free agent who wants to make some money, the Mavericks have to be on your list next year because they're going to be fun. I mean, if anything, I really hope Dallas doubles down on the offense and we roll out like a 2003, 2004 style team that just punishes people by scoring all the points. But, past that, I'm just like, this is the best situation we've ever been in going into an offseason.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Matt, look, okay, let's say this. The Mavs, even before we even get to the draft lottery and go through the draft, and you have that week of like dead space between the draft and July 1st. But let's just say when we get to the lottery that the Mavs do look up and they get the number 1 pick. Is there any player in the NBA right now that might be available? It can't be just anybody that's in a good situation doesn't want to leave. But is there a player that's realistic that you would even consider trading the number 1 pick for? Matt, start with you.
We texted about this the other day. I think we might have discussed on Twitter a little bit, and somebody brought up Anthony Davis, and I still say no. I mean, you might call me crazy, but I think you made a good point on Twitter the other day, Dalton, when you said you take 8 to 9 years of contractual control over Zion rather than risk Anthony Davis coming in here and then leaving after a year. I don't know that I haven't really watched a whole lot of college basketball this year because other than what I do for work, because frankly I think college basketball is terrible. But it from what I've seen, Zion's pretty special. He might not be a guy you can build your entire franchise around necessarily, like Luka or like LeBron or whatever, but you kind of I don't know who you could possibly rationalize trading him for, or trading that pick for that would eventually end up being him, unless it's the Knicks or the Kings picking and they take RJ Barrett or Cam Reddish first because they're stupid. But I just can't think of anybody.
Well, I can't really think of anyone either. But I mean, here's the thing with Anthony Davis. If they did do that, and it kind of scares me because it does seem like a Mavs kind of thing to do. But if he were to sign an extension, I could rationalize, with that. I could be okay with that, at least until Zion becomes a superstar and they have to play New Orleans 4 times a year and it ends up being really bad. But anyway, if he signs the extension, I could see that, because then you've got a superstar in his prime for the duration of Luka's rookie contract and a little bit further past that. So I could see that. But other than that, anybody other than Anthony Davis, I can't see doing it. And I still wouldn't do it unless, like I said, AD is willing to sign the extension to stay in Dallas, and even then it's iffy. So, Kurt, what's your thoughts on that?
I agree. I agree with Matt. I saw some of the advanced data on him. Like, I was looking for it on Twitter while you guys were talking. But Zion, in terms of what some of the advanced data is showing, he's the best prospect of the last 20 years where we have data on him. He's good at everything. Part of why you hear a lot of national NBA pundits talking about how they would take him over Luka, which I think is crazy, is because of his defensive potential. He's just. I also, and this is a little bit of a minor thing that I've come to adopt this last year. I don't think the Mavericks will talk to a Clutch Sports client ever again. I really mean that. Like, I think that what they, the stuff that they pulled with our guy last year, paired with all this LeBron stuff, it's not. I just don't even think it's a question. They don't. From what I've kind of seen and talked to, like, Clutch Sports does not operate. I hate the phrase in good faith, but Clutch Sports just makes demands, and Dallas just doesn't. They want to work with people. We've seen it over the years, the Bill Duffy clients, the things that go back over the years. They want to work with agents to make they don't accept kind of that sort of thing. So I don't think it would even be a chance. Plus, like, the marketing potential, if they were to sign, or if they were to be able to draft Zion, the marketing potential for Zion and Luka Doncic is not something Cuban would ever be able to pass up. I mean, you're talking 10 years of dominance. Maybe not, championships, but just being all over the NBA.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely one of the best collegiate prospects I've ever seen. I haven't looked at all the advanced data like you were talking about, but, the data to me is watching him take off from the paint and blocking a three-point shot in the corner.
It's horrifying. I saw somebody describe him. It's what would happen if you put like Larry Johnson as a baby in a cave with hardcore metal and just left him there for 20 years. He's just it's also like watching him jump is almost like watching something out of Harry Potter, because he just arrives at the ball. I don't. It's we know how excited we were watching Dennis dunk. Because that was just incredible, watching how high he would get. But you would also see the explosion. I still don't understand how Zion's able to get where he gets, because it doesn't seem to it violates the laws of physics. It's amazing.
Anytime somebody moves so fast and so powerful that they explode their shoe, you know that he's a pretty decent athlete, but. Also, imagine like you mentioned, the marketing potential, but imagine the free agency draw if they do, strike twice in the the lottery, the next couple of years. Like, if they have a combo of Luka and Zion and Kristaps, if you're a free agent who's trying to find the right place, like KD or Kyrie, how do you not just look at that and be like, oh my God, this team is set up for the next 15 or 20 years? It's not out of the realm of possibility that the Mavs could end up with Zion. If that happens,
like you said, it does make them an even more attractive free agency destination. How depressed is the New York Knicks fan base going to be if all that if all that happens? You know, we got Kristaps and
bring me their tears.
You know, we got Kristaps. He was their franchise player, and you know, the majority of the fan reaction I've seen is, "Oh, good riddance. He was a diva anyway." Well, I mean, come on. He was a good player, and they didn't even get to see how he looked coming back from that injury. So, I mean, that hurts. And then they're hoping all season to tank and add Zion Williamson and then add Kevin Durant. Well, I mean, imagine if that's the reverse scenario where the Mavs end up with Porzingis, Zion, and KD. I don't think that's going to happen, but if it did, it would be hilarious to, you know, see the fallout from New York.
And then the Knicks end up with Dennis Smith Jr. and Frankie Smokes. Like, come on. I would love that. I hate the Knicks are one of those teams that I just can't stand, and like a lot of that has to do with who's the annoying guy with the red hair that it's the comedian Michael Rappaport. Like I can't stand that dude, and it just his reaction alone would be worth it for me.
Well, they also haven't mattered the entire time. Like Dirk's been in the NBA. I want to say they've made the playoffs like twice his rookie year, and then that year where Tyson was there. Like they're just irrelevant. And I personally loathe big, you know, old big market teams that get media coverage for the sake of existing. You know, that sort of stuff drives me nuts.
Right, like when the Anthony Davis rumors were flying around the trade deadline, there was a quote from AD where he called the New York Knicks a great or an awesome franchise. Yeah, great organization. And I was thinking, listen to what you're saying.
It's like, dude, what the hell have you been watching the last 25 years? Like since you've been alive, they have not been good.
And then his well, it doesn't reflect his thoughts obviously, but his dad coming out and saying that, you know, he wouldn't even consider Boston. It's like, well, I mean, that's a far better organization than New York. You should be considering Boston if you want to win, but anyway.
Well, I'm just of the opinion, kind of going off what Kirk said a little bit, I'm just kind of the opinion that the NBA is actually better when the Lakers and the Knicks are terrible. That's just my opinion, but whatever.
Well, it makes for a much more entertaining online experience at the very least.
Yes.
But, you know, we were talking earlier about, or Kirk said that he doesn't think the Mavs are ever going to deal with a Clutch Sports client going forward, and you mentioned Billy Duffy. Well, going into this summer, whether it's some kind of trade or whether it's free agency, Matt and I have been talking about this for weeks now. Goran Dragic is one of his favorite players right now. He, not just because he played with Luka, but the dude's actually pretty good too. I mean, he's 32 years old, but he's got 1 year left on his deal. If he opts in, he's got a player option for this summer, but he's also a Billy Duffy client, as Luka is. And, you know, they played with each other for the Slovenian national team. And I don't know, it kind of feels like he's meant to be a Maverick. I don't know. Kirk, I mean, what are your thoughts on Dragic?
I've been a big fan of the guy for a long time. I saw Matt talking about how you know, he might possibly, you know, get to Dallas one way or another. This falls under the category of I right now I'm in the headspace of I can't think too far ahead, because it's like there's just too many paths, and it like overwhelms me, and then all of a sudden I've been online staring at tweets for 90 minutes. But in terms of him as a player and the idea, I really like any sort of chemistry. And the fact that those two have it matters more than money in a lot of circumstances. You know, we keep talking about wanting to find guys who fit the timeline. I don't necessarily think that's a thing anymore. I think that if you have your two core players, then you need to start finding pieces that fit around, and then you mix and match. So if you can get him on, you know, if he has space on his deal or not, I honestly don't know. then you just kind of take that chance, because I think that the Mavs would be really good with another really solid ball handler. He's that kind of second playmaker that we keep talking about. Like, that would be worth it for me.
Matt, what do you? I mean, I already know that Dragic is your guy, but I mean, how do you? If he does become a Maverick this summer, what do you think? How do you think that will happen? You think they make a trade for him? You think maybe they have a deal under the table? You opt out and we'll sign you to this. I mean, what are you thinking there?
Well, I kind of liken it to the DeAndre Jordan situation last year, where he was on the last year of a deal. He was in a player option, and we didn't know whether he was going to re-sign or exercise his option or whatever the term is, and then go back to LA, and then we would trade for him, or whether or not he would just opt out and we would pay him his money. I think the same kind of situation applies to Dragic here, because I mean, he talks about Luka on Twitter all the time. He's a Bill Duffy client. They won a championship together in EuroLeague or Eurobasket or whichever one it was. And if he wants to be here, he'll be here, whether it's through a trade or opting out and they sign him.
That's a really good point.
I mean, if they want to trade for him, they have that trade exception that they can use if they want to, or they can move Dwight Powell to help whatever. I'm not sure exactly how that structure would work, but it's easy to make that happen. But it's also, if he wants to be here, he can just opt out and we can give him the money he wants, or if he wants to take less. It really just depends. Like, because what Fish always talks about is that agents always, they run the league. If a player wants to be somewhere, they figure out how to get their client there, and that's how it works. And if he wants to be here, Billy Duffy will get him here.
Let me ask y'all this. Talking about Billy Duffy clients, and knowing what the potential price tag would be for either, do you think it's fair to say that Dragic is more of a possibility this summer than Vucevic?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really thinking long and hard about what Dallas needs, and the price tags for, I believe Dallas needs a secondary ball handler and somebody to grab rebounds, because Luka is a better rebounder than Kristaps, and we just can't, long term Luka can't be averaging 8.5 rebounds a game. He's going to exhaust himself. So I think they need a secondary ball handler and a rebounder. And in terms of what the market is, a ball handler and a playmaker is simply more expensive than a rebounder. You always get these one-off guys, but what Vooch brings to the table is a lot of things, but I'm not convinced that's the best use of resources, particularly if he's kind of hunting for one last big deal. I mean, that's just kind of where my head is, but both would end up working. I mean, both fit my idea of let's put as many players on the floor who can score the crap out of the basketball. So.
While we're discussing, free agents, and you said, you mentioned secondary ball handler and all that stuff. You mentioned to me the other day that you had kind of turned around a little bit on your stance on Jimmy Butler. What's up with that? You were so against him earlier in the season, and that just came out of nowhere the other day. You got to walk me through that.
Oh, God, and the Mavs Moneyball Slack just berated me. I had 6 hours worth of messages, people of the staff yelling at me about this. So basically, I kind of had heard stuff going back to the summer that he was a horrendous jerk. And, I started talking about that in the season because a lot of our fans seem to really want him. And then, I put that out there. He's a jerk. People didn't believe me. And then, everything that since has happened. And it's pretty clear that he's a jerk. Now, I also think that he's in Philadelphia, and it doesn't seem like they want to re-sign him from a lot of the stuff that I've looked into. And if that's the case, he's going to get money from somebody. But I think the likelihood of him getting a max from anyone is almost zero, unless it's one of the Knicks or the Lakers just scrambling. Now, if that's the case, it might be a max money, but he's not getting the years. Everyone's afraid of his knees. So at that point, I was thinking, if you could sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal at a few million under what he wants, is that worth it? Now, so many people have yelled at me that I think I'm probably wrong about this, but at a certain point, like, you just kind of have to assess value. And if he's that much of a locker room cancer, then the answer is no, regardless. But I can't shake it the same way you couldn't early in the season.
Right. I mean, Matt, before I give my thoughts on that, what are your thoughts on Jimmy Butler? Have you think he's just a locker room cancer, and the Mavs shouldn't touch him, or what do you think about that idea?
Well, I'm not really sure if he's a locker room cancer or not. I mean, obviously, we don't cover the guy, but the organizations that he has been in previous to Philadelphia aren't exactly like shining examples of like excellence. Minnesota and
put it nicely
are basically carbon copies of each other. They're just like dysfunctional, terrible places. So I don't know how much you can really judge Jimmy Butler based on that. I mean, yeah, he's very outspoken and probably says some things that he shouldn't say, but like, whatever. I'd be, if it's like what Kirk said and they're going to give him like a 2 or 3 year deal, like under, few million under what he's asking for, then I'd certainly be for it, especially if you're able to go out and sign other guys around him, like a Dragic or Dragic or whatever, who, still fill out that roster in a way that make you better, and then you save that $30 million in cap space and you give it to Jimmy. I don't think that's a bad move. I think that's a really good move, and I think it immediately puts you at the top of the Western Conference.
Well, and like Kirk said, there's people are concerned about his knees. Thibs ran him into the ground in Chicago and in Minnesota too, really. But the guy turns 30 before next season begins. But like Kirk mentioned earlier, it's not really about signing people to match a certain timeline anymore. That's the thing with Luka. He's when you're trying to make moves to add bigger pieces that fit a younger timeline, it's usually because the younger players aren't as developed, and it's not like a win now situation. It's a win now situation with Luka. He's far beyond what your average 20-year-old now. Can't say he's 19 anymore. Happy birthday to him, but it's just a different situation. They don't have to go out and sign other 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds. You can take a chance on a Jimmy Butler, like if it is a 2 or a 3 year deal. I don't think that hurts them.
I mean, that's kind of it. It's not like he's going to be their first priority. I mean, we all remember the summer of 2016. Harrison Barnes was not on the radar, and then he was the franchise. So you never know what can happen in free agency depending on the money available.
Yeah, that was a weird summer, and it was kind of indicative of what the Mavericks had been doing the few summers before that. Also, the Wes Matthews signing and all this, just like these terrible big money for not really any value. And they're in a position now where I think that I really don't think that's going to happen again. And if they strike out on all the Ks, Kyrie and Kevin and Clay and all the other ones, then Jimmy Butler is a very viable option, and I like him as a player, and he does a lot of things that they need. I mean, you mentioned rebounding, Kirk. And you also mentioned having a secondary playmaker. They also need a perimeter stopper. They don't have that. I mean, they have Dorian. And and Jimmy Butler does bring that. So he's another thing that you need.
Yep.
Well, and say they don't get Jimmy Butler. And if you want to add some 3-point shooting, some size, some perimeter defense, how would y'all feel about, doing a second tier combo of Bojan Bogdanovic and Al-Farouq Aminu, who are both unrestricted free agents this summer? Because that's something I've been thinking about a lot. Some people have said, well, if you're going to re-sign Dorian Finney-Smith, why would you sign Aminu? And I'm thinking, like, why would that be a bad thing to have both of them?
Yeah.
And then,
no offense to Coach Carlisle, but at a certain point you have to take away the guy's the things that he goes to, and one of his favorites is 6-foot-tall guards. And so I would love if Dallas could play a series of lineups that had reasonably tall people. So, I mean, and plus Aminu really got his career back on track in Dallas, so why not? And, Bogdanovich, and I always get them confused, but, I'm fine with either Bogdanovich. Like, that would probably be, like honestly, the better team-building move, because you bring in guys who really know what their roles are going to be based on what we were talking about earlier. It feels like you have a lot of, like, reasonably interchangeable pieces. So that could be fun. I mean, that sounds like a lot of fun. That would probably be, like, the plan A in my head.
I don't know if you can call that a plan A necessarily. I mean, obviously plan A would have to be something that is you're going for it, whatever. But as far as the most realistic, and I mean, it's it is what it is. But as far as Aminu goes, he's another one of those guys that he's like a bigger version of Dorian, and I think he shoots better. So I mean, bring him in, or I think Bohan is one of the better shooters in the Eastern Conference, in the NBA. So that's another thing that they need right there, is somebody who can actually knock down shots. Like, they don't have a guy who can knock down shots on this team, other than Luka, and I guess hopefully Kristaps once he gets back. God, speedy recovery, please, sir, because we need you.
And I mean, as far as if they swing for the fences and they try to get a meeting with KD or Kawhi or whomever, if they get the sense that they're not going to have a real chance to get one of those type players, you have to move on quickly. And I think, like I said, that's just my personal, second tier preference. Bojan Bogdanovic and Al-Farouq Aminu, I think that would be amazing. The team would be extremely fun next year, in my opinion. But I mean, I also think of the Mavs hired Bob Voulgaris before this season started, and I think when the season started, he didn't have as much say in things. He's still kind of getting a feel for the organization and getting comfortable and everything. But in my opinion, I think he had something to do with the Mavs trading 4 of their 5 starters. I think they finally looked at the analytics and they finally just decided it's time, we're going to go a different direction. And I really think he had a big say in that. I think he would have a similar say this summer, because I mean that's what they hired him for, to to give his advice on stuff like that. I think they'll look at the advanced numbers, see, take Bojan Bogdanovic for example. When you look at his advanced stats, he's just naturally one of those plus type players. He plays, good things happen. I think we're going to see some of those type of moves this summer. What do you think, Kirk?
That's like that's my hope for the realistic options. I know, and I'm sure David Lord is probably either writing on it or written about it. I've not seen anything yet, but like with the $30 million, the Mavericks kind of need to do things in a certain order, right? Because their goal probably is to sign certain people and go over the cap, because they have that right. That's one of the benefits of the restricted free agents. So they're going to have to make decisions in a hurry. So if certain people are interested in playing out the process, let's just use Kevin Durant as a pie-in-the-sky example. If Kevin Durant feels like stringing out the process and wanting to be courted in free agency, I would bet the Mavericks would move on from him faster than wait around for 5 days while other free agents sign deals. And if that is the case, if the Mavericks decide to move on from some of the big fish that they'd like to make their pitches to, then I think they stand a pretty good shot at getting some of these realistic guys. Because, there is going to be a lot of money on the market, but I think so many of these, the Mavericks could really be kind of one of those teams that swoops in and perches and snatches away some of like the B-plus free agent options. And that seems to be, that's kind of what I hope they do, because I think that's how they would get the best bang for their buck, using the space available and then being able to go over the cap to sign the restricted guys.
Right. And then last summer, when they drafted Luka and they were going into free agency, I made the comment that, maybe now they don't have to go for those superstars anymore in free agency. You can. At the time, I was saying that you'd like to hope that Luka and Dennis are those guys, and then you can build around them, and just that can be your team focus going forward. But you have to at least do your due diligence on a guy like Kevin Durant, even if you do think Luka is your superstar going forward. It doesn't hurt at all to add probably the greatest scorer in NBA history. Could be the greatest scorer in NBA history one day, but I think they'll swing for the fences early, but I think they'll move on from that quickly. And if they don't think they have a good chance to get a big guy like Kevin Durant or Kawhi Leonard or even Kyrie Irving, somebody like that, they'll just take the approach that, hey, Luka's our guy. We'll get some of these other, like you said, B-plus guys that are a really good fit for our team, and we're going to go out there and have some fun this season.
No, yeah, I think Kirk makes an excellent point with the whole waiting around thing and seizing opportunities and using the cap space wisely. Because, even the idea of signing a restricted free agent or attempting to sign a restricted free agent kind of scares me a little bit. Like, if you want to go out and try and get, say, Malcolm Brogdon, for example, you have to wait 3 or 4 days before you know one way or the other whether Milwaukee's going to match, and then your money's tied up.
Yep.
So, the idea of that also really scares me in the way the free agent market's going to play out, especially because, this is one of – we don't know what the free agent market's going to look like next year. We kind of have an idea right now of what this year is going to be, and a year like this is not going to come around again, and at least to this level. Because, if you look at all the guys that you have on the market right now, like Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker, Chris Middleton, all these guys, and
the K team, they all start with K.
I didn't realize that until you started talking about it. That's amazing.
No, yeah, Dalton and Fish and I joke around. We call it playing K sometimes. There's so many guys with letter K, it's ridiculous. But you have to go in thinking. You have to go in with the game plan. Like, okay, we've heard through back channels that this guy and this guy and this guy aren't interested, and now we have to move on to, an Aminu, a Bogdanovich, whatever, just so you're not tied up waiting around seeing what happens and then everybody goes away.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that, like Kirk said earlier, realistically, what you would hope for is that, they whatever they do, they need to do it quickly. They don't need to wait around, because that's the worst case scenario, is if they wait around for one of the top tier guys while the second tier guys are signing elsewhere, and then, when you're looking for a rebounder, you end up overpaying a guy like Willie Cauley-Stein. That would be the worst.
Don't scare me, Dalton.
That would be one of the worst case scenarios. And I think we talked about this with Fish. Matt and I did a few episodes ago about if it came to that. I think a guy like Cauley-Stein could work in Dallas, but you don't want it to get to that point. If it does get to that point, their plans failed miserably.
Absolutely.
But just branching off of that, what do you guys think of Dirk potentially coming back for a NBA record-setting 22nd season? You think obviously he says it depends on how his body feels after the season. He feels like he's been saying that for 5 years now, and he looks like he feels pretty dang good right now. He's averaged almost 13 points per game since being inserted as a starter again. Do you think free agency, or how the draft turns out in free agency, would have any kind of pull with Dirk making his decision, or what do you think, Kirk?
I really do think that free agency and draft will play a part. I do think he's like 90% out the door, and I think that if I'm him, I think that getting, basically getting treated like a mascot is probably a little, I'm sure he likes it on the one hand because it's nice to be recognized, but some of this stuff is getting a little over the top. He didn't ask for any of this. He's not out there parading around like Dwayne Wade, who's, I said last night that Dwayne Wade is behaving like somebody who is getting married for the second time, and he wants to prove to everyone that he's so happy. So he has a hashtag and all this crap associated with it. It's just driving me crazy. Whereas Dirk is just, Dirk wants to play basketball. He should have played more for longer. The Lord knows Rick Carlisle, the most stubborn man in the universe, needs to have all his toys taken away from him before he'll consider playing Dirk. I don't know if he should come back. I wouldn't begrudge him. I think that it would be super awkward, which at this point I sort of am rooting for because I think that's funny. Just like the awkwardness of what would happen. I'm getting a little tired of hearing from people who don't watch the Mavericks about how bad he looks. He looked bad. He looks fine now. They know how to use him. He just needs more than 3-minute bursts. And it's there's these options. There are these things that have happened over the game. The Cleveland game really stands out, where certain players, Luka, won't pass him the ball. So I don't know, what he's supposed to do about some of these things when he's not putting up statistics, when he's not getting the opportunity. I don't think he comes back, but the deep dark part of my heart really hopes that we just, he just keeps rolling out there until he's 60 years old.
Well, and Matt, I'll ask you too. You can finish us up here with your thoughts on it too. But me personally, I think he's going to come back at this point because, and the reason I say that, I think he was really, really bummed out that he ended up missing so much time earlier this year. I think it was 26 games he missed before he finally got some action. Then when he came back, he was playing one night, not playing the next, and he just wasn't himself. I think before the season, even though he wasn't going to announce it, he kind of had it in his head like, okay, this is probably my last ride. But then when all that happened, it was just like, man, this really sucks. Like, I'm not getting to go out on my terms, really. I mean, I think even if they end up with a couple of second-tier guys in free agency, at this point and how he looks right now, I think he's going to come back because unless he has another injury in these last 20 games like he did last year and he ended up having to have the ankle surgery, unless he has an injury come up like that, I think he's going to try to have a strong summer, come back not injured to start the season and, get in the flow of things a little bit earlier and try to contribute next year. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with, the whole thing about he wasn't really able to come in and finish on his terms, so to speak. And it's not only because of the injury. I legitimately believe he didn't know necessarily coming into the season whether or not it was going to be his last one. Because, I mean, Dirk's a very honest guy. If he says he wants to come in and see how his body feels, I believe it. He's not Brett Favre. I'll put it that way. So when he comes in and says things like that, and then he starts coming down the final stretch of the season playing like this, it gives me a lot of hope. But also I think that the NBA is like almost trying to force his hand. Like we keep posting that GIF from The Office with Michael pushing the old guy out the door. It's like it's kind of like that, and it's
that was perfect.
They're doing it in a way where they're trying to pair him with Dwayne Wade, which honestly it's kind of it's a dick move.
It's increasingly insulting. As we move along, like it was cute once, it's not anymore.
Yeah, and I don't think he wants that. Like, I think he wants to go out on his own terms, on the court, but also like he doesn't want to be like paired and remembered with Dwayne Wade for the rest of his life. I don't think.
I was going to tell Kirk, Matt, you told me, I think it was a few weeks ago, that Dwayne Wade, one of the reasons he's being as dramatic as he is, he's filming a documentary about this. So I don't know if you knew that, Kurt, but when I found out of it,
it's the Ken Burns Dwayne Wade documentary. It's going to be like 36 hours long.
Yeah, 36 hours of him throwing the ball in the air and exchanging jerseys and all that shit. I mean, it's obnoxious, but like Dirk doesn't want to go into the Hall of Fame with this guy. I don't think he wants to just. And I also don't think he wants to go on this whole farewell tour across the NBA where like every time he touches the ball, like I mean, you called him a mascot, Kirk. And I had the same kind of thought process earlier in the year. I mean, he was almost like a sideshow, even at the American Airlines Center. It's like every time he touches the ball, people are like, oh my God, here we go, it's Dirk. It's like, just let the dude play basketball.
Yep.
And I don't know whether he's going to get that or if it's going to be worse next year. But if as far as him personally finishing his career, I think he'd rather end it, at least try to end it, going into next year with a team who he feels can really be competitive and that he doesn't even necessarily have to have huge contributions. Like he could, I don't know how they would do the minutes, whatever. He's going to be 47,000 years old, but like we have to consider that he wants to be a part of a good team one more time before he goes out.
Well, I just had an idea. This is a totally novel idea. What he could do is he could step away next year, go to TNT, broadcast games, be terrible at it, and then rejoin the Mavs in 2021. Is that a good idea? Can we do that?
I don't think that Dirk is capable of being as bad as Jason Witten at anything. So, but I like where your head's at, though.
Hey, whatever, man. The Mavs, they'll be further along in their development at that point. He may have a better chance at a ring.
This idea.
He'll have bionic knees at that point, Dalton.
Right.
But yeah, that, like I said, I don't know. That's just my feeling. I feel like he's going to come back because he missed so many games. I think he wants to try and put together more of a complete season if he can. Kristaps Porzingis is there. Tim McMahon said something in one of his recent pieces that Kristaps Porzingis is like kind of quietly trying to talk him into coming back next season. So I think it's probably going to happen. We'll just have to wait and see. But
damn, you might have just talked me into this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send.
I mean, Kristaps did grow up idolizing Dirk, and he wants to at least get on the court with him a couple times, I think, before Dirk retires. So maybe we'll have some sort of an impact.
The no lateral movement lineup between him, Doncic, and Dirk. Just like three tall. Like, get your arms out. None of you can move side to side.
I think it was Kirk that mentioned on Twitter earlier in the year, and I kind of stole it last night during the Mavs game, where Luka with baby giraffe legs on defense. Like, can you imagine that lineup?
It's hard to be too critical of Luka's defense when like Dennis had the same problem, and then all of a sudden Dennis was like, "Oh wow, you're not terrible at this." So I have faith, but yes, it is very much one of those things where it would be so incredible to watch those three together. I don't know what I would do. Like this year is like probably the most fun I've had as a sports fan in a long time because like everything that happens feels just like joy. And so I'm really trying to like keep my expectations rather low because if it works out that way, like that would just be so awesome. Not to mention 41 playing, he's number 41 playing at age 41, playing in his 22nd year. The Mavs would have the ability to do all sorts of Taylor Swift, tie-ins. It would be excellent. I'm really full. Like, okay, I'm sold on this idea. Dirk's coming back. Good work. We did it.
All of Europe would be on the Mavericks side. I mean, there's not a country in Europe who would cheer against the Mavericks at that point.
We're Europe South right now.
From the McMahon piece, this is exactly what he said. He said, Porzingis, who is considered Nowitzki an idol while a kid, has quietly lobbied the 14-time All-Star to come back next season so they can play together. It's a consideration for Nowitzki, but his focus now is on the daily grind required to give himself a chance to finish the season on a high note. So,
okay.
I mean, that's what gave me a lot of hope.
I mean, Dalton, you texted me that earlier, and I almost I was driving my car. I was at the vet, and I was driving my car home, and I almost drove off the road. Like I was like, "Oh my God, it's happening! It's actually going to happen." Because I mean, how can you disappoint like basically your stepson? I mean, that would just be a bad look.
Well, we'll all hope for that. Kirk, he put out a piece on Mavs Moneyball today, kind of telling everybody to pump the brakes, so to speak, on forcing Dirk out the door. Everybody's trying to do that right now, and they really just need to enjoy what they know they have left. 20 games left. If that's all we have left, we need to enjoy the heck out of it, because it's been a good ride, and if this is it, you want him to finish strong.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a better way to put it. It's every game that passes, especially home games that passes. It's just like you have to, like, in our position where we're credentialed and we have the ability to do the things that we do, from like going into the locker room and being around the team and stuff. It's like every time you pass up on one more opportunity to be around Dirk, you're just like, you got to take advantage of it, because we don't know what's coming next.
Right. Well, that's probably going to do it for this episode, guys. Kirk, we really appreciate you coming on and chatting with us a little bit. We'll definitely have to do it again sometime down the road. We appreciate you coming on with us.
Sure thing, guys. Appreciate it. It was fun.
Yep. We'll talk to you later, buddy. We appreciate all you guys for listening, as always. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast. We're pretty much everywhere now. Matt, he set up a YouTube channel here recently, so you can find us there too. Can't tell you guys how much we appreciate the support, as always. We wouldn't be able to keep coming back every week and doing this if we didn't have all of you tuning in and giving us all the listens and the support that you do. So thank you again. We really appreciate it. Matt, you have anything to add?
Not really. We really appreciate everything. We're going to have more guests like Kirk coming up here in the near future as well, so keep an eye out for that, and also for our work on DallasBasketball.com. We really work hard to bring you good content there too. David Lord has a really good piece out right now about the Mavs trade exception, which is the largest in NBA history. So that's cool. Go check that out. And Dalton's piece on organic tanking and the lottery odds and all that stuff is a really good read as well. So go check those out when you have a chance.
Yep. And like I said, just can't thank you enough for the support. You guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
The master best on the flow. I'm wild, but yeah, I'm the GOAT. This game get cold. Yeah, you minded the coach, your friends turn into your foe. But I'ma just roll. Gotta keep rolling your boat. Yeah, I swear I give them hope. I say I'm cleaner than the soap. This time of year proves who will really sink or float for real. Yeah, it's the Mavericks, all about action. Don't do no acting, no Samuel Jackson. Dirk at the ball, you know that it's magic. Post move deadly, yeah, get tragic. Yeah, it's the Mavericks, all about action. Don't do no acting, no Samuel Jackson. Dirk at the ball, you know that it's magic. Post move deadly, yeah, get tragic. In this game, it's a lot of grit. You know what I'm saying? Proves who has integrity. Late nights, early mornings, but we all want the trophy at the end of the day. And that's the beauty of this game, because at the end of the day, only the real gonna float, man, for real. You either sink or you float. Only the real gonna float.